Vodacom is majority owned by Vodafone, and it has operations in South Africa, Tanzania, the DRC, Lesotho and Mozambique.
And it's about to have an investment in Kenya as well, because it is making a move to acquire that stake of Vodafone, not the whole one, on Safaricom. So it'll have about a 35% stake in Safaricom as well if the deal goes ahead.
And it's an if. Market cap, 245.6 billion rand, price to earnings ratio 17.8, and a dividend yield here of 5%. Share price graph will give us a sense of where Vodacom is tracking.
It's had a good 5 years, and look at that. It's managed that share price performance, and it's been a generous dividend payer with a yield above 5%. Nesan, do you want to give us an overview of these?
Yeah, you know, Vodacom has always been the very defensive, high dividend value play in the sector, sort of well-behaved one as well compared to MTN. We'll talk about this now. But what I like about Vodacom is that there's a consistency about earnings year to year, you know, which is very difficult to find in the current environment with, you know, commodity stocks, for example. You can't really rely on you know, consistent earnings growth. Vodacom has battled, though, in the last few years to try and achieve growth. You know, it's one of the criticisms of Vodacom not being able to grow. A few years back, they tried to do that big deal with Neotel, which you know, met with a lot of issues, and eventually the Competition Commission said that they couldn't go ahead. The Safaricom deal is an attempt by Vodacom to try and achieve growth. So, you know, we'll have to see. It takes, I think, a bit longer to bed these transactions down than what the market initially perceives. But you know, looking at Vodacom's track record, you're going to have to back them on being able to successfully do this one.
Just looking at the Africa exposure and the DRC, Lesotho, Mozambique, it still doesn't feature as an enormous value proposition for Vodacom.
Yeah, look, the DRC has got a lot of people in it, but the poverty in that area is deep and wide. You know, it's a nation which had a terrible colonial past, and Mozambique has also got a fairly high population but very limited affordability. So what you need, of course, is a big potential market, but one also where there are enough people that can consume at an average revenue per user level above a certain minimum basic. That has been the problem. I think the Kenyan business is attractive, although remember, it's a little bit like they're playing shuffleboard with their parent, because they are buying a stake from Vodafone UK and paying for it by giving more Vodacom shares to Vodafone UK, which will increase Vodafone's stake in Vodacom to about 70%. So it's really just kind of a sort of family deal, if you know what I mean.
And talking about family deals, we can be assured that the dividend yield will remain high because, of course, the parent is going to continue to want money.
They want their lolly.
Yeah, well, you know, we're going to have to watch that very carefully, because remember, there's a level of dilution that's going to take place now through the issue of more shares. If that's met with the same, you know, cash that comes in from Safaricom, then you'd expect the dividend to remain the same. But as I said, you know, these things on paper look very different to the reality 1 or 2 years down the line.
Have you held, sorry, Paul, have you held Vodacom through the last couple of years?
So we hold Vodacom on behalf of many clients, and it's really because of its defensive nature. You know, the other thing with Vodacom is in South Africa, which, as you quite rightly pointed out, is a big market, the biggest market for Vodacom. You know, we've been waiting in anticipation for this new radio spectrum to come on stream, which essentially would give them the ability to create more infrastructure for data transmission. So, and if you think of data as water going through a pipe, this radio spectrum is going to give you a much bigger pipe to allow a lot more water to go through.
Well, didn't mean to interrupt your train of thought there.
Well, let's stick with this point for a while. There is a regulatory concern. So the South African Department of Telecommunications, or whatever they call themselves these days, put out an absurdly badly written white paper talking about how the networks should all throw their backhaul section into some national infrastructure communications company and then lease it back and so on. That obviously horrified the networks that have spent tens of billions of rands every 6 months in building this network over a period of 2 or 3 decades. But it does look as though the government has now backed away from that. I mean, and haven't we seen that from the South African government before? Some new ideologue arrives at the department, writes some crazy white paper, everybody in Parliament gets excited, and then they realize it's just a mess and it can't be implemented. So that's the phase we're in. I'm assuming in my investment case that that doesn't come to pass.
Are your clients exposed to Vodacom?
We are. We don't have a lot of it, but we do have handfuls of it. But I did want to make the point earlier about why I like it. In a network environment, obviously people live in a particular geographic and spatial layout in a particular country. Once you have the base stations, the towers, and the fiber lines between the base stations, you don't have to pay that much more from a CapEx point of view to upgrade from 4G to 5G, but you can get a concomitant uptick in data sales because you can suddenly meet people's requirements. So I just think we're going to see more data sales growth.
And it's almost like the asset
At a
management
lower
industry,
capital
because
cost.
you have the base, and they can
Your
now
marginal
generate
cost of
extensive
selling an
revenue on
extra gig is not significant. And that's why I'm more positive about these companies than I think many are.
Hot, not Nesan.
Listen, I'm hot on it. I'll watch the share price very carefully, though, because if it does run a little bit, you probably would look to
Take some money off the table. Let me help you there. Hot, not Paul.
No, I don't believe in taking money off the table. I like it always to be fully invested. So
Yes,
this is
know.
a hot stock for me, and one that people can definitely accumulate at current levels.